All right, so why don't we do this example here? I know it's in the book, but let's just do it our own way and see if we can figure this out. So this is in chapter 6.3, and we're going to build this little application here to analyze the grades. Okay, so we have a form here to have an input box for the grade. We'll record the grade and add those grades into the list box here, and then we're going to calculate the average out of all the scores, and then we'll also get the highest grade and put it inside the list box here, or the text box here. Okay, so let me let me do this, and I'm going to minimize this, and I will let's go in here. Let's create a new project. Okay, create a new project, and then we will build this little form here. I can find where it went. I think it's the bottom here. Okay, so right here. This is the one that we want to build. Okay. So let's add a new project. And this is, what's this called? Just put in grades. Okay. Or like this student, or analyze grades, how's that? So the project will be called analyze. I'll put chapter 16 or chapter 6, analyze grades. Okay. So Visual Basic Forms, and then we're going to build a little form there. Let me minimize this so I can see it. It'll look like that. And move to the side just a little bit. Alright, so my controls, toolbox, and then let's build this. So I have a label that goes right here. Now this label says grade, right? I'll make this font size of like 20. It's big enough for us to see. So grade goes here. This is a label, so let me just go ahead and name all these to have the convention. Grade, that's a label grade. Then I have a text box for the grade. That right here. This would be the txt grade. Okay. I'm going to change the font size to 20 also. Make it kind of big so we can see it easily. Alright. And then need to add a button right here. This is to record the grade. So this will be btn record grade. And the text of that should be record grade. And you can change the font size also. 20. So we'll enter the grade, we'll record any number of grades, and then we'll just click calculate the highest grade. So at another button, you can just copy this one and drag it down right below it. And then this one is going to say BTN, just say calculate is fine. It's going to calculate average and the highest grade at the same time. So the font or the text would say, notice again it has 2 lines, so if you want to cause the line break, you want to click on this arrow key here, and then you type in the text in this box here. You can say calculate grade, and then press the shift key, hit enter to go to the next line, and highest grade. Hit enter, or go click back out, and you should have it the font is too big, so I'm going to change the font to a smaller font size, maybe 14. Yeah, 14 seems to be okay. Let me change both of those to 14. It just doesn't look that great. Okay, so that will do the calculation for us. And then below that we have another label and a text box. So I could copy this two here on the top. Okay, just select those with the mouse and then just control drag, put it down here, and then do two more and one more for the highest grade. So we might want to move this a little bit over here. And this is the label for LBL average, just AVG grade. Okay, so the text will be average grade. You want to remove that over here. Okay, and the second is going to be highest grade. Okay, and then move that over here. And this is a label, so we'll put label LBL highest grade. So the average grade text box, we'll call that TXT AVG grade, and we'll lock it. Okay, so we'll set the enable to false. You just double click on enable, so it's not selectable, editable. You do the same thing with the highest grade. We enable it and disable the enable part. This will be the TXT highest grade. Okay. And then we need a list box. The list box over here. I don't know why it's not as. We'll just add, like, we'll make it this tall, I guess. And I'm going to change the font to 20. So hopefully have enough grade in there. I think there should be enough. At least 10, maybe. And this is the LST for grades, LST grades. Okay, so I think I'm good with my form. Looks good enough for me. Alright, so we're not doing any initialization here. We're just gonna go right into the record grade. So when you well, I'm gonna center my form actually. Let me just turn this back on. I want to center the form on the center screen. The start position will be center screen so that it's centered. Alright, so when you run, you'll see that it should look like that. Okay, when you click, you put some grade here, for example, 90, add that, it puts it here. You put like 87, add it, put it here, and you have a list of items. And then when you click the calculate grade, and it's going to grab the content or the data from this list box, calculate the average, and then it will also look at the list and get the highest grade and then put it in here. Okay? Alright, so we're done with that book, so we're going to look in the code here. So, how should we tackle this problem, what's the first thing we need to do? How would you tackle this problem? If I were to assign this to you as an assignment, how would you, where would you start? How would you start? So you start from the top down, right? First thing is you want to record the grade. Okay, you run this. What should happen? In this case, we want to record the grade. Okay, so the record button here, so we have two events. One is for the grade recording, and one's for the calculation of the grade. So there's no grade, really, there's no calculation. So what that means is that when I run this, if there's no grade, if I click on calculate, then there should be just 0, right? Okay, and then when I click record, then I should add that to the list. So let's do the record grade part first. So double click on the record grade button to get this subroutine to restore our grade. So what should we do here? We run the application. I input a grade of 90. I hit record grade. It goes in here. Then what does it do? What is it supposed to do? So it's going to add that grade, right? You enter a number, click record. You basically move the number here to the list. Okay, you got to add it to the list. So the list is going to grow based on the number of grades you add to that every time you record. So if we have 10 students, we're going to have 10 grades in here. Okay, and then we'll stop any time because we can just click the button here. So the first thing is we want to add that grade to the list box. So this is really simple. All you have to do is basically we want to add a number from that list box. So you could do in 2 steps or just in a single step. Okay, so we do in 2 or a couple steps. So the easiest way, I would say easiest way, but usually you do it this way. You would declare a variable called maybe grade, right? And let's just say grades can be decimal numbers. So this would be as type of double. Okay, and the grade will come directly from the text box called grade, right? That's what we call. Okay, that's this box here. So let me do it this way. Let me move it over here. Here's my form. Oops. Okay. Hope I didn't screw up. Okay, so here's that list, and this is the code here. So I'm reading the grade from this text box to this grade variable name here, and then next thing is going to move this grade to the list box over here. Okay, so I'm doing that is basically I'm going to say lst grades dot items dot add that grade. That's all I'm doing. Okay, I'm just adding that grade to hit enter the grade, click record. It goes in here, the record button here. It reads the grade from the text box to a variable called grade, and then I add that grade to the items and the LST grades list box. And then I'm done. You wait, enter a new grade, you click again, it adds it to the list. Okay, so if you save now, if you click start and run, and that's what should happen. If you put like 90, adds it to the grade, right? If I enter again as a second grade, I put 95, I put like 98, and then 98.6. Okay, so that's all we're doing here. We're adding the grades to the list box. So now we have 5 grades entered. So once you have that entered here, then we are going to calculate the grade. You click here. Okay, it's going to go and read the data from this list box called LST grades. Read all of them. So we're using a loop. Okay, we're going to count from the list from 0 index to the nth here minus 1. So whatever that grade may be, we'll do the count. Okay, and then we'll take the average based on the number of grades here. You add them all together, divided by the count, right? Get the average, we put it here. And then we also want to search in the list box here. We find the largest number of the grade. This case would be 98.6. Put that in here. Okay, so we do 2 things in here. Okay, so the first part is pretty much done. We just need to do the second part. So the second part is now this button here. So double click on the calculate grade and highest grade button to add this new event down here for us. So now the first thing we want to do is we want to calculate the average. So we can say I need a variable for the average. Or I just call it maybe AVG grade. Okay, this will be double type. And you want for the average, and you also need one for the highest, right? So dim highest grade as double also. So we're gonna put the average grade to this box, and we'll put the highest grade to this box from this list. Okay, so how would you do this? How would you do the how do we tackle this problem? So the first thing is you want to set a counter, okay, because you want to read from this list here from how many counter there are. So we need to know the total number of items in this list box. So we need another variable called maybe, well, we need a counter, right, as it's just a counter, so it's indexed as integer, and we'll set that to 0, just like what we did earlier. We also need to know the number of items or number of elements in the list box, so we'll do dim maybe just max, I guess call it max, or max item is fine. Max is fine, integer. And the max, we'll do it right away, is equal to the LST grades dot items dot count. Okay, this will give us the total count in that list. If there's 1, it will return 1. If there's none, it will return 0. If it's 10, it will be 10. And then we'll count from 0 to the max number minus 1. Okay, because we counted from 0 to 10, the index of 10 minus 1, we get the 9th index position, which is a total of 10. So to do the average, you need to do a loop, right? So we say while what? You can use while, you can just do while, doesn't matter. But in this case, it's just say we use while. While, how do you loop through the list box? So what is the condition here? Max? Yeah, max is part of it. While so if you count the this list, how do you count from that to the end of the list? So as soon as you count, you have a pointer. It's pointing to the first position here. Okay, so it's pointing to this first item here. That is a counter, because counter is at 0, right? So the 0 position is pointing right here. So when we say while counter, okay, the counter is at 0. Well, that is less than the max item. Well, that is true, because we have a max. If I added 5 grades to it, so the counter will the count will return 5. Okay, so the max count is 5, but we're starting from 0 through 5. So the first one is 0. Is 0 less than 5? Yes, it is. So if that is true, then read the first number. Okay, read the first number, and then and then so for the average, you want to have another number to store all these total, right? We're going to add all these numbers together, and then we'll divide it by the number of counts. Okay, so I need another value here for maybe for the sum, as this will be double. This will store the number of sum of all grades. Okay. So while counter less than max, then you want to get the number. So you could, I mean, I'm doing in a very simple fashion here. You could read directly from the list box. But let's just say we'll get the number. So I get another variable called as double for the num. The num will be the current number here. So I'll read num. Read the list grades dot items. Which item is it? The nth item, whatever that could be. So that's the counter position. If it's the first number, it'll be 0. Grab the number, assign it to the num. Okay, and then now we just add it to the sum. So sum is equal to sum plus num. Okay. Right, this is same thing as saying sum is equal to sum plus num. Same thing. We add it to the sum. We keep adding each grade to the total grade. And then finally, don't forget you want to increment our counter. Make sure that we move that pointer line by line. If you don't do that, you're stuck at the first position, and then we have an infinite loop. Okay, so we increment a counter, we move down the list until we read all the items there, we add them up to the sum, and then we're done with the list. And then now sum should contain all the total values of this list here, and then we just have to calculate the average. So average is then, now once we're done with the loop, and then we get the total sum, then we just calculate the average. So then AVG grade equals, how do we calculate the average? How do we do it? Yeah, so total sum, right? Divided by the total number of count we have, which is called max, right? Of a max of 10 grades, then we add the sum of all those 10 grades together divided by max, and we get the average. Okay? So this part here is calculate average grade. And then once we get the average, then we want to print the average or display the average to the txt average box here. So how do we do that? So txt average grade, right? Okay, dot text, good, equals avg grade. And we can force this to have like 2 decimal numbers. Okay, so we put toString and then put n in here, or n2, to have 2 decimal numbers. Otherwise, it's not consistent, so we just force it to be that as well. And up here as well, like in the grade part, the grade up here, you could force your grade up here to be 2 decimal places. So it looks nicer. Even though you enter 90, we're just forced to say 90.00. So let's modify this part here on the top. We're going to put grade dot toText, toString, and then we'll put the n2 in here. The n is just a number, right? It's n2. We force it to be 2 decimal numbers. Then we add that to the list box. Okay, so what that means that when you run this, we add a number. If you put like a 3, it will put 300. 5.5, it would still be 35.50. So you force it to have a decimal number in there. So it's consistent. Okay, so we got that there. So right down here again, we get our grade, average grade. So that should be done. So let's say that is true. Let's save this and run it now. And let's put some numbers. Let's put some, let's just say 90. I'll put a 95. And let's put another, let's just say 100%. We had 3 grades. If you calculate now, because we didn't really do the highest grade, so that shouldn't be a problem. But let's see if the average is correct. So you click on the average, and the average is 95. Okay, which is about right. If you add them all, you divide it by 3, you get 95. So that's the average grade. Okay, if you want to add another one, maybe like 86, and because the numbers are still there, which is fine, and you do the calculation, you get a different average. It goes down because you have a lower grade there. So this one works fine, right? So the next part we need to take here is the highest grade. So for example, from this list, what is the highest grade here? 100, right? So how do we get the highest grade and display the highest grade down here? There are lots of ways to do it, but we'll do it using the loop one simple way. I wouldn't say simple, but one way to do it. Okay, so let's go into our code and let's find the average grade. The highest grade. So we got that average grade. And then now we're going to get the highest grade. Get highest grade. So we'll do another loop. I'll do a separate loop for this one. You could do it one time. If you do all together once here, but we'll do it separately, and then later we'll combine them together into a single loop because they're kind of redundant. So we'll do the same thing. We're going to look through the entire grade here again from the 0 to the nth number, and we compare the grades. Okay? So again, we'll do a while counter is the same thing, less than max. Then you look at the num. The number is going to be lst grades dot items of the counter, the first number. And notice up here we have a variable called highest grade. Okay, so that will store the highest grade. So how do we determine the highest grade here? How do we know that is the highest grade? Because the numbers can be in any order. Let's assume that we're not sorting this. If you sort this, it'll be easy. But let's assume we're not sorting this. So how do you go down the list here and then grab the highest number, put it into the list box here, the text box here? So what is that algorithm? What is the process of doing that? How do you obtain it? Any idea? If you have a list of numbers and I want to grab the largest number only out of that entire list, how would you do it? How do you go about from solving the problem? So we know how to do it in the remember what we did before with the odd and even numbers, right? So you have to test each number. Okay, the first number will test it, and initially we'll assume that the highest number is going to be 0. Bless you. So that is the highest number that we don't know. Okay, so that is the highest number. So now we need to test our list. This number here, the first one, is this larger or equal to the highest number? Right? If it is, then that is the highest number. If it is greater. If it's not, then we just skip it. Move to the next number. Okay? So we'll say if num is greater than we'll just say greater than, equal. I think we don't have to say equal, because if it's equal, then it's the same number. If it's greater than the highest num, the highest grade, If that is true, then the highest grade should be the new number, right? Otherwise, we just skip it. So we look at this. So it initially was 0. The highest grade is 0. So if you read the first grade, if it's 90, we'll say is 90 greater than 0? Yes, it is. Then therefore the highest grade should be that number, which is 90 now. So the highest grade has been changed from 0 to 90. Okay? And then we're done with that. So now we move to the next number. So again, the next number is we have to increment our counter to move down the list. So you move to the second number, and then we repeat the process. We read the second number is at 1, and then this number, we compare this number, which is, let's just say if it's 95, is 95 greater than 90? Yes, it is. So now the highest grade is now 95. It's no longer 90. And then we move to the third number. If the third number is, let's say, is 85. 85 is not greater than the highest number, so we skip that, and our highest number still is 95. It hasn't been changed yet, so we'll keep that as highest. And we'll loop through this entire list until we find the highest number, and then we're done. If we find another number is also 95, then this is also not true, so therefore we're not changing the number at all. It would still be 95, and that is still the highest number, so we should still be good with that. Okay? So I think that's it for this one here. Let's run this application and see if that's correct. So let's just put first 90. We'll put another one here, 95. Add another score, maybe like 98. Put 87. And we'll put one more, just to put, like 89 or something, 89. Okay? So we got 5 grades, and we'll click the calculate grade and highest average. We'll find that we didn't have the highest grade displayed yet, but you got the average. Because the highest grade is not shown. Why is it not there? Did we do something wrong? Because we didn't print it, right? We didn't show it to the screen. So once we're done with the loop here, we already obtained the highest grade, and then finally we just show it. So this would be the txt highest grade dot text equal the highest grade. Again, 2 string, 2 decimal places will be N2. Okay, so that's our highest grade. We just forgot to display the results back. So run this again, put some numbers in there, 90, 95, 98, 89, and 85. Okay, so we get our average. Oh, something's not right there. I have to figure out why. Did I put something not right? Yeah, it should be outside the while loop. Okay, let's figure. Okay, so we got that right. So the highest is not correct. It's saying it's 0, so that means it didn't go into the num there. Okay, we'll figure out why. All right, so we got a 0 there. So initially our average grade was, our highest grade was set to 0. Oh, because, the reason is because, here's a good example of the while loop, right? Remember we have a top, our pretest. Okay. So if we get a 0, that means that this loop never get executed. Okay, we never really get to check those numbers. Does anybody know why? This code never runs. That's why we get a 0, which is 0 up here. And so this is one of those examples that you also want to be careful of, because what you have here is what's called a what type of error is this? This is not a syntax error. Syntax is if you mistype your code, right? Syntax would be like if you put, well, something like that. So this is a syntax error. It's not a runtime. Runtime would be like if you're out of boundary. That's a runtime error. So if I put like for example, if I put something like something that's out of the range, then that's a runtime error. But in this example here, I have so for example, I click this, right? I get a what's called a runtime error. Okay, because there's no number in the list, so therefore I get this error. This is an example of a logical error, because the counter here, we never reset it, right? We run the first through loop here, we have counter goes all the way from 0 to max, which is 11. When we exit out of this loop, counter is still 11. And then when we do the test here, is counter less than or equal to max? No, because counter is already 11, and therefore we never run this code here. Okay, and this is because of what we're using the same counter. If you use a different variable, it would be different. So now we want to have the counter reset it back to 0. Okay, so make sure we set it to 0, and it starts from 0 again from the list. Otherwise, we just continue from there and say, oh, counter is never less than max, so therefore it's false, and it will never run here, and so the grade will also always be 0. Okay. So now if we fix that, run it again. 90, so any number is fine. 95, 96, 89, and then 85. Just do 4. So the average grade would be around 90 something, and then the highest grade would be 96 down here. Okay, so that's what we get. It will look at the first number, 90. Is it greater than 0? Yes, it is. So we replace the highest grade with 90. Check the second number. Is 96 greater than 90? Yes. Then we replace the highest grade with 96. We check the third number. Is it greater than 96? No, we skip that. 85 is less. We skip that as well. So highest grade will still be 96. All right. So if you look at this code here, it's redundant. Right? This loop and this loop is redundant. What that means is, how would you combine this together? Since I'm looping through the same loop this many number of times, I could just move this part here, okay, this whole part here, copy that and put it in here. Okay, get my highest number at the same time as I'm doing my summation of all the grades. So what that means is that this whole part, I don't have to do it. This whole while loop here, I can just comment these out, and I would already have my highest grade when I went through this single loop to do both the summation as well as get the highest number, highest grade at the same time. Okay. So you don't have to do it twice, which would have prevented the problem that we had earlier about why not, but we forgot to reset it to 0. Okay, so if you put that in here, the if block in here, and if you run it, you should have the same. It should still work as fine. If you put a number, 56, 78, and 43, 12. And 23, for example. Okay, you get the average there. The highest grade will still be 78. Okay, so it works just fine. Any questions? All right, so then if you look at this example here, we read the data. So this is for reading the input, right? You populate the data here. Next, when you click on this, we do two calculations, right? So we put it here. Now, how would you break this part, or actually all these here, using functions? We learned functions last time. So to get the average, I want to pass the data or to a function, and then the function will calculate the average, returns the average back. So here, like right here, instead of saying this, I want this to say just like this. I'll say average grade is, we get average like that. Get average. And then also the highest grade, I would say highest grade is, get highest grade. I just want to do like that. And so when I'm doing that, I don't need all of these here, right? I don't want to see all that here. Just my code will be very clean. And I just get the average grade, get the highest grade, and display it. Okay? So, let me undo this. Let's break this down into functions. We'll create a function called getAverage, and then we will get the average from here, and then we'll return the average to this average here. Okay, so let's do a function down here. We'll call it function. Why would I need a function and not a subroutine? Why do I choose function and not a subroutine? Do you remember? Because I'm returning data, right? I'm returning something back. I want to calculate the average and then return the average back to where it is being called right here. I'm not passing any parameters because I can grab this information directly from the list. Okay, so down here would be like function get average. I return this as a double type. Okay. So now I'm going to go up here and just copy everything here all the way to the while. Actually, all the way to the sum here. Okay, to the sum here. Cut everything out. Okay, and move it into my average function. And I will just comment this out, or I remove the comment here. And the highest grade, we need to remove that. We don't need that here because I'm only doing the average. So if this is the average, then I could have an average in here as well. I could do like dem average grade. You could if you want. You don't have to, but you could. So you do that just like before. And again, if you remember, a function must return something, so we return the average back. Okay, so the last line here would be return the average grade. Okay, and the reason why I said you could have this here is because you could do this way, or you could just say return the sum directly here. Return that, and then if you do that way, you don't need the average, right? So either way you do is fine. So I'm going to leave it as it was before. It's just that you can do that way, so you don't have to have an additional line here and an additional line of code here. But if this one makes it easier to understand, then do it this way. So as you can see, I need a counter to count through the list. I would need to get the total number of items and get the sum of the grade, each number, and then get the average out of that and return the average back to where it's being called. So now average comes back here as a double, and it will be assigned to the average variable here we declare inside this subroutine. Okay, and then we'll do the same with the get highest grade. So we have another function called get highest grade, and we'll loop through the count through the list box and just return the highest grade back to the highest grade here. So down here we'll do a similar function. We call it get highest grade. We're not accepting any parameter, bless you. And the highest grade return is also type double, right? And then we said earlier that the way we did was, if you look at this one here, right? This block of code here. So now we need this part, okay? So we copy this block here, put it inside the average, and be the highest grade, and let's uncomment these out. So just highlight those, and if you go into your form, and then up here, right, put it back in here, up here, and then just uncomment it. And then now we need a counter, the max, and the num, and so on. So those are just these guys right here. We have the counter, the max, and the num. So I can copy this and put it down here as well. And we don't need the sum. Sum is only for the summation, so we don't need that. And then the highest grade. So we need to have a highest grade variable, so we can compare it to. This will be a temp grade or current highest grade. So we can create that in here as a local variable. You can do like dim highest grade as double, and we'll set the same thing as before above. Set it to 0. We'll assume that this is the highest grade. If it's not, then we replace it with the current highest grade, and we'll keep it there. And then once we are done, if you got the highest grade at the end, we just return the highest grade. Okay? Back to where it was being called, whoever's called this function. So again, these are kind of similar to the variables we use in the other functions, but because these are local variables, it only gets used inside this function here, and they don't have, they're not exposed to the other functions, so they're locally declared inside this function. So you just need them to do what needs to be done inside this function. After that, then these get deleted from memory. Okay. So then, so we have two functions. One returns the average, one returns the highest grade, and then they will go in here. The highest grade goes here, average goes here, and then finally we just print them out. So let me just remove all these line 20 through line 31. So now if you look at our code, it's much cleaner. It's very clean and simple and short. So to save it now, and if you run, hopefully it should work just like before. Let's put some numbers in here. 90, 95, 85. We just stop there. So 3 grades. You get the average, and the highest grade is 95. Okay? So this is how you modularize your code. You break it down into small pieces, into specific functions that does exactly what it's supposed to do. It only does it for that purpose. Okay, so it's much easier to debug. Earlier we have all the both the codes inside a single while loop here, You do the summation, get the average, also get the highest grade. And that is fine, but it's not as efficient as now because now we have functions to do that for it. So the average, all it does is just calculate the average, and that's all we want. It's the highest grade. All it does is just calculate the highest grade. But you say, I have a lot of code here. Well, that's fine because you can call this as many times as you want. Okay? If you have 10 lines of code, it's better than if you do 20 or 30 times, right? So redundancy is you want to eliminate that. And of course, you can break this code down into much shorter if you want. Like here, I don't have to use the num here. I could just say, grab that here and put it here, right? If you do that there, so you eliminate another line, you eliminate this here, you can see it goes shorter and shorter, and then you can do that as well. So lots of ways. But initially, you would do this way until it works. Once it works, then you can go back and refine your code, and that is the process of refinement. We talked about that last time, also how you refine your code, make it shorter and shorter. Okay, so that's that. And again, the average here, you can refine your code to make it shorter as well. And then up here, you can even refine this to make it even shorter, right? Instead of saying average, you may not need this at all. You may not need all these at all. You could, remove all of these, for example. And in here, I would just say get average. Okay. You see that's really short. Get average, and then here is get highest grade. And you can see that's 2 lines. I break that down to just 2 lines of code, because functions can be on the right side of the equal sign, right? So it calls this function here. It does the calculation, returns the total sum of the average back, and they convert the sum or the average to a string of 2 decimal places. So you can see it gets really short. Okay, but I'll leave it as was before. So just that if you do it this way, it's shorter. And when you get better at it, you would do it this way. But when you just starting, then you can do it this way, so you can see things in this perspective. Because this is the same as this. It's just replacing that to this, and then print that out, right? So as you can see how variable names are used in this sense. It's very powerful. Any questions how this was done? From we broke it down into from a almost like a 20 lines of code into 5-6 lines of code, and we use 2 functions to do the calculation for us. Okay, very, very useful and very powerful. That's why functions and subroutines are really powerful. So this display here, right? Because this is really simple, so that's fine. If it gets a lot of couple lines of text here to display data, you could move this out to another subroutine to display the output. So we will say show result, and that will be a subroutine because it doesn't return any data back. We just want to display the information, so you can move that out to a subroutine. This is just 2 lines of code, so that's fine the way it is. So if you want to add some more stuff to this list, and if you want to say, I'm also finding the average of highest grade. I also want to make sure what letter grade this grade translates to. Then you have another box here, right? So you get average grade, your highest grade, and you get your letter grade. Okay. So your letter grade could be shown down here, either A, B, C, D, or F. And I think this would be a good addition to this part. And then maybe I'll let you do that part when we come back from break. Okay, so let's take a break.